Welcome back to another episode of Supergene Unleashed. Today, I am pleased to welcome Raphael Veron to the show. He is the founder of Muse Avenue, which is a B2B marketplace for salons offering chair rental. And this is pretty cool because it actually allows hair professionals to be freelancers and find a space. And it also helps salons because they can turn unused chairs into profit. And what I really want to uncover with Raphael today is a deeper understanding of what it's like being a straight man in a female-dominated environment and what insights us women might benefit from a man's perspective. So, Raphael, please tell us, how did you actually get into the hair and beauty industry?
Hi, Stacy. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your nice introduction. How I got into the industry is totally by chance, actually. I was about to start a master's degree in management in a business school in France. And before doing that, I had to do a 6 month internship abroad for the Frank Provo franchise in Australia. So Frank Provo is one of the major premium hair salon franchises in the world, originally based from Paris. That was founded in 1975. So it's a very famous brand in France. It's like more than 400 salons in France and about 700 in the world. And they were looking for an intern in finance and operations. So I went there, I got the internship, stayed there for 6 months to help them. They only had one salon there at the time. And then when I went back to France and I finished my master's degree, they actually offered me to come back as a full-time employee. And I was given the opportunity to go back as an operations manager and to help them expand in Australia, basically. After about a couple of years, I became the general manager of the brand in Australia, and I kept running it for another 7 years. So I stayed for 9 years in total, running the Frank Provo franchise in Australia.
So actually, you were really majoring and studying business, and so it was the internship in Australia that led you over there. I mean, what was it like, entering into a very female-dominated workplace? Did you face any skepticism? Obviously, you were also coming over to Australia, and I don't think that you had been there before, so you were entering a new market, a new culture. What was it like entering this industry over there as an intern, nonetheless?
Yeah, as an intern, I was 21 years old, so I was just, there to learn, really. I was mostly working from the head office, and I would go into the salons. There was only one salon, and then we opened the second one during my internship there. So it was a pretty small company at the time. So yeah, it was fine because I was just the young intern, I was just there to learn, and it was good. I was learning a lot because the vibe was very startup-y, launched by two French entrepreneurs who had bought the master franchise rights for Australia. They owned the brand, but it was an Australian company founded by French entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you had a bit of cultural connection in that regard then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then I got along with the team really well. Like I remember when I first got introduced to the head of education, Virginie, who was a woman with a very strong personality. When I first went to meet her, the owners were like, "Oh, he's going to meet Virginie. So it's basically going to be make or break, because she's such a strong personality. She's going to have a strong opinion about you." And they couldn't really know which way it was going to go. Was she going to like me, or was she going to, hate me? And we really hit it off, and we really got along really well, and we started working together. And so at the time I was an intern, so I was assisting her with her education programs for the hairdressers, and we really became good friends. And when I came back 3 years later as an operations manager, I was then her boss. But we stayed friends, and we had an amazing work relationship for the next 9 years. And I'm the godfather of her 2 children now, and it's been really an amazing journey.
You obviously really hit it off. You passed the test then in that initial interview.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. Sometimes people have said that about me, like that either it would be one or the other. So that's really wonderful that you were able to strike such a great balance with a female counterpart, and especially coming back as her boss or her manager. Was there any friction whatsoever, or was it pretty smooth sailing? How did you navigate that relationship, since you prefaced it that she had a strong personality? And the interesting thing is actually women are often told this in the workplace. Women are often given feedback saying that your personality is too strong, it's too dominant. But yet it's nice to hear from your side that that really didn't phase you at all. Like you didn't even look at that as a thing.
No, and to be honest, that didn't phase the founders either because it's because of her strong personality and her kind of outgoing personality that they gave her more responsibility, and she came first as a junior hairdresser in the group in France, and then she became really quickly the head of education. And then when I came back, she was then running the flagship salon in Sydney for the franchise on top of being the head of education. And then she eventually um, I promoted her to head of HR, and now she's still in the company, and she's basically the director of HR and education in the group. And no, it benefited her to have to know what she wanted, and that she had really, a clear idea of where she wanted to go. And for me, no, I thought. I didn't think it was a problem. To be honest, I was told as well multiple times during my career that I had, too strong of a personality sometimes. So I don't know if
Oh,
it's only
really?
women who get these kinds of comments. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily in that
Were you told that by a man or a woman?
by a man. Yeah. Well, I was told I was arrogant.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy. I haven't really come across that, to be honest with you. Or maybe just men haven't chosen to share. They didn't want to, divulge such constructive feedback.
Look, I think what happens is the reality is that men can be pretty tough, but women as well, to be honest. People can be tough
Yeah.
in the workplace and give you harsh feedback. I think men get harsh feedback as much as women do. So yeah, I don't know. For me, like everybody has to bring something to the workplace depending on their personality. We all have to learn how to work together. I mean, for me in my career, we always made it work. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. I've especially encountered that working in Dubai for the past 9 years because it is such a cultural melting pot. Coming from the US and working in New York, where it was a certain work style, it was a complete 180 in terms of being thrown into a ring with so many different work styles and cultures and personalities, as you say. I guess it means that you have to be much more observant. What gender biases or barriers have you observed in the beauty industry? And how do you think that they can be addressed? Obviously, you've been in it for more than a decade. Do you think that being a man has also given you some kind of an advantage working in a female led industry?
Good question. So, I mean, obviously, because it's a female-led industry, in our company, it was mostly women who had, I mean, salon managers, for instance, were mostly women. Biases, I mean, I don't know if we can call them biases, but I guess, did that help me to be a man? Yes, I think sometimes it did. Based on what feedback that I heard from my female colleagues in the industry, I heard sometimes that they would say that some of them wouldn't want to be in a salon where there was only female colleagues because they thought that the environment would be too, it's their words, not mine, too toxic. So
Okay.
they liked when there was like one man in the salon that kind of balances things out. And for me, like most of my career, I got along with, I mean, you know, pretty much everyone. I mean, you work with hundreds of people over the years, so I can't claim that it went smoothly with
Yeah.
100% of people, but I think generally I got along with everyone, and the fact that I was a man didn't pose any problem. The main problem I had is that I was pretty young when I came back, and I was coordinating these four salons at the time. So I was the manager of the salon managers, and I was 24, and
Oh,
some of them
wow.
were like 35, 40, 45 years old. So that was more of a problem for me to manage, the fact that I was so much younger than some of them, than the fact that I was a man and they were women, or that the gender thing was never really a big issue from my perspective anyway. I didn't feel it.
Well, that's really great to hear because sometimes, at least in my experience, I've, encountered some men who um, haven't really approached it that way, let's say. But it's interesting as well to hear that women were saying that they wanted a man to quote unquote balance out the environment. I'm curious to know what kind of conversations were had in the absence of a man, and I guess one's imagination can think about it. But in terms of the way that women work compared to how men think and act in business settings, have you seen any major differences?
It's a good question. It's not super obvious. I think it's more that there were people with different personality types. You know, you have people who are more entrepreneurial in their personality, people who are more assertive. They tend more generally to get into position of power. I mean, for sure, the people that I tend to choose as managers tend to be people who are really proactive, you know, like
Yeah.
they would take responsibility without me having to ask them to do it. So obviously when you have to choose a manager, then it's kind of logical you go towards the people who've already been doing the job. And so for me, I wasn't really thinking in terms of gender. I was more thinking in terms of who do we have in the salon who can hold the reins, who is proactive and can manage a team. So I was not necessarily thinking, oh, we need a man manager there or we need a woman manager. I was more thinking, who can do the job? I was really basing my decision based on competence. And in that regard, I mean, I haven't done the statistics, but there was clearly more women who had the job, but there was also more women in the industry. So it kind of made sense. There was also some men who got the job. It was really more based on personality and willingness to do the job as well, than gender. Even
Yeah.
though, yeah, you're in a female dominated industry, sure, but at the end of the day, you just want someone who wants the job and who can do it.
Yeah, I really appreciate your, unbiased viewpoint. And yes, although by default there were naturally more women, which would mean that you would have more female leaders, I appreciate that you were looking at things from a practical point of view and assessing people based on capability. There's times, or you hear about stories where it's not necessarily like that, or there's an unconscious bias that sometimes is driving the decision making. And that kind of leads me to the next area I want to ask you about is what advice would you give to men who want to support women more meaningfully, especially in industries that they may not be a part of? And you seem to be a huge supporter of women. You kind of have no choice not to be.
Look, I mean, my advice, I don't know if it's a popular advice, but my advice is to treat women based on their competence, not their gender. Treat everyone based on their competence, really, and despite their gender, their skin color, or anything like that. Personally, I want to work with people who work competent in what they do, also whom I can get along with. So I'm not thinking, oh, she's a woman, so I gotta treat her differently. I mean, obviously there are things that you have to do differently. For instance, we had multiple women becoming pregnant during my career in
Yeah.
Frankfurt. Of course, you want to show support and you want to be, we're going to manage. Of course, we're going to make sure that you can go on maternity leave when you need to, and you're going to have your job back when you come back, obviously. So you want to do that, but I would also do it for a man who becomes a dad and needs that time off. So for me, my advice is, well, just based on their character and their competence, not their gender or anything else like that. This is what matters in the workplace, is character and competence.
I really appreciate that. It's kind of like the golden rule that we're taught from a very young age, right? Treat others how you want to be treated. So it's nice to see that you carry that forward in a business sense. I want to shift gears over to talking about Muse Avenue and understanding a little bit more about this journey that you've embarked on. I think it's been 2 years now since you basically left the stable corporate world. What led you to this decision to make that leap? And did you have any fears or doubts going into it?
Yes. So I always wanted to become an entrepreneur since before I started my university degree. So that's really something I was like, oh, I wanna start my own business eventually. And when I got the opportunity to come to Australia and work with Frank Provo, I was seeing it as a school of entrepreneurship because it was still a young company and there was a lot of things to do in a small organization. And then it happened that I just stayed for so long there because I just loved my job and the people I was working with and didn't have a clear idea of what I was going to do next. Then when I decided to launch my business, it took a bit of time for me to actually jump. And yes, I was terrified, honestly
Okay.
terrified. I thought of myself as someone brave, but when it was about, quitting your stable job that you've been doing for 9 years, that where you have a good salary, where you know everyone, you really master your trade in a way because you know the company like the back of your hand. You've hired most of the people who work there.
It's extremely comfortable.
Yes, and thinking, okay, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna have no safety net. It's not like my business was generating revenue. I was gonna be able to pay me. I knew I was gonna have to work without a salary for probably a couple of years, and I had no idea if it was gonna work. And by then, I also had convinced a friend to join me in the adventure as a co-founder. He had quit his job in Paris and moved to Australia with his fiancée to be my CTO. So that was this weight of responsibilities as well of, oh my God, if we're not doing it, like if we're failing, it's not only me who fails, it's like I'm taking someone else down with me.
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
even two people because his fiance moved. So you were almost like
yeah,
taking a big risk whether or not, well, if they would like living in Australia, but also the risk of your dream for the vision of the company. But they
yeah,
followed you and he followed you.
yeah. Happily because it's been really amazing to work together. But yeah, eventually it's actually my older sister who, because I have four sisters as well. It's worth
Okay.
mentioning.
So you grew up in a female dominated home, even.
Well, I also have two brothers, but yes,
Okay.
four girls and three boys. So definitely
Wow.
female dominated. And my father has five sisters, and my mother has two sisters. So it was, yeah, very female
Wow.
dominated family. But yeah, my older sister, who's kind of been my mentor because she's very involved in the startup world in France. At some point, she was like kicking my ass, saying, "You gotta do it, Raf. You can't just keep doing it as a side hustle on while you're at Front Row. You gotta quit and do it full time and really give it a shot and see if it's working or not. And then if it's not working, you'll move on." So thanks to her,
So
I
you had
finally did it.
actually kind of started it on the side before you fully
Uh,
left.
Yeah, I had done like a prototype, started talking to people, and I had found my co-founder in 2022 while I was still working at Frank Provo, and I quit and we launched officially full time in January 2023.
And when you first launched Muse Avenue, I mean, I don't think it was what it is today. Is that correct?
When we first launched Muse Avenue, it was initially a marketplace that was supposed to connect independent professionals and clients. So I was thinking clients, they need to find the right hairdresser. It's not so much about the salon anymore. It's more about the person. And
Mm-hmm.
those people move around a lot. Sometimes they work from home. Sometimes, they work from a co-working space. So we really need to put them on the map. So we started with that, but we didn't really figure out how to commercialize it. And after about 6 months, we had like 500 professionals on the platform, and salon owners started to reach out saying, "Hey, can we advertise on your platform because you have all these independent professionals, and I'm interested in renting chairs, basically."
Oh, okay.
And that's when I was like, back to the origin. Wait a minute, this is obviously, we kind of brainstorm with my co-founder and we talked to all these potential customers. And in January 2024, basically, we were like, okay, we should really look into, should we really go down that route of focusing on a B2B marketplace for chair rental? And so we made that decision in February. We put in the bin 80% of what we had built the year before was a B2C marketplace. And yeah, we relaunched basically our new chair rental B2B marketplace in March 2024 and started commercializing it then. And yeah, that's what it is now. So we made a pivot after a year, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible to, come out with one thing. I think the original idea is still really cool, by the way, because I definitely can understand the trend that you highlighted that a lot of people are now following artists and people who are, good within their craft, be it hair, makeup, massage. And it's actually kind of difficult to find these people. The large way to find them is through influencer, micro influencer, your network, and social media. Do you think you would ever expand the platform back to include that, or do you think that you're just going to keep it kind of fixated within this chair rental space and focus on building and scaling that particular vertical out?
I think there's definitely potential for us to re-expand towards, we have like 2,500 independent professionals on the market, on the platform right now. So it wouldn't take necessarily a lot of work to develop like a B2C marketplace for them to be found by consumers. The main problem is how do you commercialize it and are people ready to pay for that? What we realized at the time is that there is a lot of competition on the market for B2C marketplaces in the industry. Like, people find a hairdresser through Instagram or TikTok. Then you have all the booking platforms who have marketplaces attached to it. Because we weren't developing a booking system, it was like, how are we going to really commercialize that? Are we going to get them to pay per lead? And we felt like professionals were like, oh, this is a cool idea, but it was not like a must have. They were not like, oh, this is solving a massive pain point for me and I'm ready to pay for it. Where in the chair rental space, salon owners were desperate for a solution to connect with independent professionals. They were definitely ready to pay for it. There was no marketplace connecting the two sides. So even independent professionals were like, yeah, we want to go on our own, but where are we going to do it? How much is it going to cost? Am I going to find the right salon with the right vibe for me and my clients? So we felt like this was where we could make a real difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, usually where you see startups succeed is when they really nail that product market fit and they're coming and filling a gap, as you said, and solving a problem where another entity isn't solving that problem. I want to dial it back to your initial comment about being completely terrified to take the risk. Obviously, now you're a couple years in. You have really honed in on what Muse Avenue is, and you've found that product market fit. How do you feel now? Do you still feel terrified, or do you have more confidence? I want to ask you, do you see any differences when it comes to risk taking between men and women? Often we hear some studies saying that women are not as big of risk takers as men. So I don't know if you would say that that's true. Obviously, your sister doesn't sound like she falls in that category, but I'm just kind of curious to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, so for your first question, how do I feel now? Definitely, yes, more confident. Especially the last 6 months for the company have been really excellent. It's really taking off. So, when you see all your efforts that are starting to pay off, you have happy customers, you feel you're making a difference, you start generating revenue properly, and you start seeing that you're going to be able to live off your hard work. That feels really good. It definitely took a bit of time. We spent more than 2 years working on it without paying ourselves, reinvesting 100% of everything we were generating into building up the business and solving the problem better. And we're still mostly doing that. But yeah, it's an amazing journey. We know there's still a huge amount of work to do, and we take kind of every day as it comes, like you never know what's really around the corner in entrepreneurship. You try to make projections and you have a plan, but you really have to figure it out as you go. Even after having studied business and having run businesses for 10 years, it was kind of starting from scratch again. Not starting from scratch, but there was so many things to learn again as an entrepreneur, it's really an awesome school of business and of resilience. So, there's zero regret for sure. I'm so happy we took the leap and we are, confident for the future. And yeah, it's an awesome experience. The main thing I noticed is that definitely when you go to startup events, it's 80-90% men who are there. Like founders are men. And I'm not talking about the ones who get funding. I'm talking about the ones who are eating ramen and have a tiny startup that that hasn't reached product market fit and are desperately trying to raise money or attract any kind of interest in what they're doing. And I was there for a long time. And it was mostly men doing that. So chasing that wild dream, that crazy idea was definitely 80-90% men.
How have you been able to stay motivated to keep going? Just to try and encourage more women out there. And I'm sure that there's so many women out there that have ideas and would love to take that leap of faith. What are some things that have helped you stay motivated despite the ups and downs that you've encountered?
For me, I think two main things I would say. The fear of regret, like not feeling like given it a proper shot, or not feeling like I've really done what was needed to see it succeed, which sometimes, the frontier between persistence and foolishness can be blurry. And I felt many times talking about my idea to someone that they thought this is never going to work and I'm a fool. So look, we're
But
not out of
by
the
the
woods yet.
way, Melanie Perkins, she encountered that with Canva. I mean, if you read her startup story, she was constantly given the decline and now she's completely blown up.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the story of
Yeah,
entrepreneurship, really. We see in the media, oh, that person raised $5 million based on a deck. That very, very rarely happens. The reality is that, it's like thousands of entrepreneurs who are working on their own or with one co-founder on a crazy idea that generates no revenue, that has just a bunch of users. They are still struggling to find some kind of product market fit. And you go to these events and you pitch your ideas to each other, and it's like really a bunch of fools who have those crazy dreams, but it's hard to convince someone that it actually has legs. So I think you're gonna be ready for it. If you start your own business, you have to be convinced that the problem you're trying to solve is real and is very painful. And it's better if when you've experienced it yourself, either in your personal life or in your professional life. And you have to be ready to look like a fool for a few years because it's not glamorous. Early stage entrepreneurship is not glamorous. I think that's the main thing. Yeah, I'm a startup founder. The reality of startup founders is they don't make any money, so they have no money to like buy any fancy things or travel around, or their company is unknown. It looks crappy. Like the product doesn't work properly. The branding is all crooked, and nobody takes them seriously. I was the group general manager of Frank Provo, Australia. I was managing 100 people and dozens of salons, a company that was making more than $10 million a year in revenue. I felt like I was someone, I was
right.
someone. But as soon as I quit and started my company, I was nobody. And
Yeah.
even the people I used to work with, they didn't care about me anymore because like the L'Oreal and the partners, they were like, yeah, I mean, your little business, it's a cute idea, but come back when you have something worth selling. That's something that actually works. The fact that you used to run a company before and it gave you some kind of credibility doesn't matter much anymore. So you have to rebuild yourself, and it is tricky to do. In terms of women and men, again, I'm not sure what goes on into women's mind. I mean, obviously there are women who are really prone to risk. You mentioned Melanie Perkins. She's not the
Yeah.
only one. There's obviously many very successful female entrepreneurs. Is there more men that are prone to risk proportionally? Looks like it, just based on the data, based on the number of men who are giving it a shot. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know if I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know why or
Yeah, of course. I was just curious to see if there were any observations that you had, but I think that what you've shared in terms of advice for anyone considering launching a startup, you've really shared some important pieces of wisdom. I especially like the point about being able to take the transition of going from being in a prestigious role, having all of this leadership and oversight, to basically starting at ground zero or being a nobody, going from something that's giving you so much of a name and credibility to having to find your new path of credibility. And I think that that's something that maybe a lot of people could get burnt out by if they don't have that realization going into it, that large majority of it is going to be extremely tough, and you're going to have that resilience, as you said. That's probably why you're able to sit here a few years on and maintain your composure so well, because you have come to terms that that's how it's gone. I want to just switch gears to one more juicy question about what you have learned working with so many women. Surely you had to be exposed to some gossip, the good, the bad, especially working within the salon environment. What are some of the main things that maybe you've learned about working with women that might help them to be more themselves?
It's true that the hair and beauty sector is known to be prone to gossip. That's something everybody kind of tries to, you know, fight against. So it's there, but everybody tries to fight against it. So there was gossip as well at Frank Provo for sure. I think our rule was kind of, if you have a problem, talk to your manager. Don't talk to your other colleagues, and not address the problem with people who can solve it, to try to work against that. And regarding your comment about gossip, that's how we were trying to manage it. Regarding advice on how women can be themselves in the workplace, that's what you mentioned. I mean, who am I really to give advice to women in the workplace? I mean, for me, I think everybody has so much to bring to the table. I think what makes a company perform really well is when you have people who are very complementary. You don't want to have a bunch of clones to run a business. That doesn't work. You want people who have different expertise, different characters, different personalities. Even in our startup with my co-founder, we are not the same people, and that's why it works, because we can split the tasks between ourselves, and we can become really good at what we do, and trust that the other person is better than us at what they do. And I think in the workplace, I think women, each individually, not because they are women necessarily, but just because they are unique human being with their own life story and their own personality, they can bring something different to the table, and they should embrace whatever they are bringing to the table that is different, make it their strength, and rely on that heavily. That is what makes a business successful, or any organization successful. It's when people don't try to just copy each other and be the same, but just be themselves and bring something great that other people don't have. And women definitely have a lot to bring to the table that most men don't have. But again, not making generalities, because I think there are women who behave like what you would expect from men, and there are men who behave like what you would expect from women. So I think at the end of the day, it's a matter of individuality and personality. But my main advice would be, don't try to act like a man. Like, don't think that acting like a man is what is going to make you successful or happy in your work. Just be yourself. For me, for instance, I definitely learned a lot from my female colleagues. Many things I also learned from my male colleagues, but I think we can learn from each other, and trying to be inspired by what people bring to the table in terms of being better at listening. I don't think maybe I was so good at listening when I first started my career. I learned to listen more, and I think it made me a better manager to speak less and listen more, and to learn to be more patient. That's also something I learned in my previous job. Keep my composure, even when you get sometimes into a difficult conversation. Sometimes people can be pretty rough. I love working in a balanced environment with men, with women, with people from different backgrounds, diversity of opinion and culture and ages as well. I think it's great to be able to work with older people and younger people, because that's what society is. You learn from each other. But yeah, I do think that for me, it's more a matter of character and competence. Because again, if you have a company of, let's say, 50% men and 50% women, but they all have the same personality, and that can happen, then there's no point. Like,
Right.
what you want is people with different behaviors and personality. That's what makes the real diversity, and the real wealth and health is into the different characters of individuals. I mean, that's my opinion anyway.
Well, I think it's a very refreshing point of view to hear, especially because sometimes you can see companies that have a lot of that sameness, or where you see the people have been in the position for so long, and it's the same people making the same kind of decisions. So I really appreciate your perspective about having a diversity of personalities and all of these things. This is such a great place to leave it. I really love the advice that you are sending to all of our female listeners about embracing your femininity and embracing your strengths and not to try to be something that you're not. And that's exactly the message that I'm trying to get out there, is that you should be who you are. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. And for everyone who's listening, can you share how people can find you and how they can find Muse Avenue?
Thank you so much, Stacy, for inviting me, and we had a great conversation. Our website is museavenue.co. It's also museavenue.co on Instagram and most of our social media. If you like what we're doing and you want to get in touch, please don't hesitate to reach out, add me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to keep the conversation going with the ones who are interested in having it.